And how many boxes in total that Mr. Nato removed from the storage room in Mar-a-Lago? And I believe it's referenced in paragraph 59 as well.
Yes, I believe, as it says in paragraph 59, between the 23rd of May and I think it was June 2nd, he removed at Donald Trump's direction a total of 64 boxes and brought them to Trump's residence.
And he took them to Mr. Trump's residence from the storage room, is that right?
Yes.
And just to confirm, Mr. Nato moved these boxes just a day after Mr. Trump met with his attorneys about responding to the grand jury subpoena, is that correct?
Well, yes, he actually, the first day that is listed here is in paragraph 54, when he moved the first box. Yeah, so then if you look at paragraph 59, subsection A, 3 boxes were moved on the 24th. On the 30th, Trump and Nauta spoke by phone for about 30 seconds, and very shortly after that, over a period of a little less than 2 hours, Nauta moved another 50 boxes from the storage room.
John speaking, this is the part they always skip. Jack Smith presented a trifecta of evidence, insider notes, digital forensics, and private recordings so overwhelming that the judge called it outcome determinative. Trump witnesses collapsed on the stand, and the judge signaled the case is effectively over. The gasps in the courtroom when witnesses started reversing their testimony showed how shocking the reversals were. These were Trump-aligned witnesses, people who were supposed to help his defense, people who'd given prior testimonies supporting Trump's version of events. But when confronted with Smith's new evidence, they couldn't maintain those stories. They had to admit they'd been wrong, or worse, had to admit they'd been lying. Some witnesses literally broke down, started crying on the stand, said they couldn't continue lying when faced with proof that contradicted their statements.
That same day, there was a text exchange between Nauta and the president's wife, and in that, I'm summarizing here, but it's on paper. She was saying we're not going to have room for all these boxes on the plane, and Mr. Nauta replied, I think he wanted to pick from them. I don't imagine him wanting to take the boxes. He told me to put them in the room and that he was going to talk to you about them. And then on the first, 11 more boxes were moved out of the storage room.
So that's a lot of movement of boxes, right? And it makes sense that it's under the concealment of evidence section of your indictment. I believe going to paragraph 63, you provide a pretty succinct summary of the number of boxes that were moved versus the number of boxes that were returned to the storage room. So do you mind summarizing that piece for us so we understand exactly how many boxes were left in the summary room?
So
the storage room, sorry.
Sure. Paragraph 63 summarizes that between May 23rd and June 2nd,
that kind of dramatic witness collapse is devastating for any defense. It shows even Trump's own supporters can't maintain his lies when confronted with hard evidence. The description of Trump's legal team being an invisible panic is accurate because they weren't prepared for this. They didn't know Smith had this evidence. They didn't know their witnesses were about to collapse. They'd built their entire defense strategy around certain assumptions about what evidence existed and what witnesses would say. And Smith just destroyed all of those assumptions. He showed he has evidence the defense didn't know about. He showed he can make Trump's own witnesses flip. That creates a situation where Trump's lawyers don't know what other surprises might be coming. They don't know which other witnesses might collapse.
Nauta, at Trump's direction, moved 64 boxes from the storage room to the residence. And then afterwards, Nauta and De Oliveira returned to the storage room only 30 boxes.
So there were only 30 boxes left in the storage room, although there were 64 boxes that were at Mar-a-Lago, to your knowledge, based upon this indictment.
Well, they returned 30. How many more were still in there that they hadn't taken at all? That would be added to that.
Why was there any significance to moving all these boxes prior to June 2nd of 2022? And I believe this is referenced in the false certification of the FBI section of the indictment. So what's the significance of moving all these boxes just before June 2nd of 2022?
Because Donald Trump was on notice that his attorney was going to search that room, search for classified documents in that room, and in between the time he was put on notice of that and the time that that he actually did that, at Donald Trump's direction, 64 boxes were taken out, but only 30 were returned.
They can't trust their own defense strategy anymore. The specific evidence Smith submitted apparently includes insider knowledge about election interference, people who were in the room when Trump discussed overturning the election, who heard Trump's actual plans, who can testify about what Trump knew and what he intended. That insider testimony is the most damaging kind of evidence because it proves Trump's state of mind. It proves he knew what he was doing was illegal, but did it anyway. The digital forensics proving Trump deleted surveillance footage is smoking gun evidence of obstruction because it shows Trump knew he was being investigated. New footage existed that would incriminate him and deliberately destroyed that evidence. That's textbook obstruction of justice. That's consciousness of guilt.
So how many boxes did Mr. Trump's attorney actually review when he returned to Mar-a-Lago for the review on June 2nd of 2022? And again, I believe this is in the false certification section of the indictment.
Right. The attorney looked through all the boxes that were in the room and reviewed the contents of the boxes in the storage room, and he located 38 documents with classification markings that he took out and he put in a Redwell folder, and that he then taped.
Did the evidence show in the indictment that Mr. Trump's attorney believed that he had reviewed the entire universe of documents at Mar-a-Lago?
I'm trying to see if that's here in the indictment. I could answer that question. Well, I can't answer anything that's not in this indictment, but.
And just to make it clear for the record, why can't you answer anything that's not clear in this indictment?
Well, that issue, the question of whether he reviewed, in his view, all the boxes, if the answer to that would be within the final report, and again, I don't have a recollection one way or the other, unless there's another public filing about that. My understanding is I can't discuss issues like that.
That proves Trump knew he'd committed crimes and was trying to hide the proof. The evidence about illegal retention of classified documents includes not just proof Trump had the documents, but proof he knew he wasn't supposed to have them. Proof he refused to return them despite being asked repeatedly. Proof he showed them to people without clearances. Proof he lied about having them. All of that together is comprehensive proof of the classified documents charges. The real-time digital communications directly implicating Trump are particularly powerful because they're contemporaneous, created at the time events were happening. They can't be dismissed as faulty memory years later. These are texts and emails from when Trump was committing the crimes, proving his involvement, proving his knowledge, proving his intent. Legal experts describing the defense as in shambles captures the situation perfectly. The defense had a strategy, had witnesses prepared, had arguments ready, and Smith just demolished all of it. He showed he has evidence that makes the defense arguments ridiculous.
Due to the injunction.
We'll go on to the next section about the attempt to delete security camera footage. And we're working our way up to this August court-authorized search of Mar-a-Lago. If you can't see where we're going here. So on page 27, that's the section that starts the attempt to delete security camera footage. Did the evidence show that Mr. Trump attempted to or tried to direct someone else to delete security camera footage at Mar-a-Lago? Can you please describe from the indictment, of course, what evidence showed that Mr. Trump directed someone to delete security footage at Mar-a-Lago?
Well, just speaking to what's in the indictment, not anything outside it, unless you direct me to public filing. It starts on paragraph 74, and it goes through paragraph 87. Is there any particular part you'd like me to
So I'm going to
address?
start with June 22nd of 2022. It's paragraph 75. I believe the Department of Justice sent a message to an attorney for Mr. Trump's business organization that might have provided knowledge for him. What was emailed to an attorney for Mr. Trump's business organization that kind of started off this process?
He showed he can flip the defense witnesses. He showed he has a comprehensive, corroborated case that ties Trump to every element of every crime charged. That leaves the defense with nothing. No viable strategy, no reliable witnesses, no way to counter the prosecution's evidence. The characterization of Smith now having a unified, corroborated narrative is what prosecutors dream of, because juries believe cases where everything fits together, where multiple witnesses tell the same story, where documents support the testimony, where there's a clear logical progression from evidence to conclusion. And that's apparently what Smith presented. A complete story of Trump's crimes, backed by overwhelming evidence from multiple sources, all saying the same thing. Now, let's dig into what specific evidence Smith provided, how it caused witnesses to collapse, and why this makes Trump's conviction virtually inevitable. The insider notes apparently come from people who worked closely with Trump, White House staff, campaign advisors, people who were present for key meetings and conversations. These notes describe what Trump said in private, what plans he made, what instructions he gave, all the things Trump thought would never become public because they were said to trusted allies. But some of those allies kept notes, documented what happened. And now those notes are in Smith's hands being presented to the court, showing exactly what Trump knew and intended. The digital forensics involved technical analysis of electronic devices and systems. Apparently, Smith's team recovered deleted files from Trump's computers and phones. They recovered surveillance footage Trump thought he'd erased. They used digital timestamps and metadata to prove when certain actions occurred. All of this technical evidence is difficult to dispute. You can't claim the computers are lying. You can't say the timestamps are wrong. It's objective proof of what happened and when. The recordings of Trump's private admissions are perhaps the most devastating because they're Trump's own voice. Trump saying things he never intended the public to hear. Maybe admitting he knew documents were classified. Maybe acknowledging he was breaking the law. Maybe discussing how to cover up crimes. Whatever the specific content, having Trump on tape making admissions that contradict his public statements is case-ending evidence. Juries believe recordings. They can't dismiss them as biased witnesses or faulty memories. It's just Trump's own words proving his guilt. The witness reversals apparently happened when Smith's team used the new evidence during cross-examination. They'd ask a witness about their prior testimony, then show the witness documents or recordings that contradicted what they'd said. And witnesses had to choose. Continue lying and risk perjury charges, or admit the truth and acknowledge their prior testimony was false. Many chose to tell the truth, to recant their earlier statements, to admit they'd been wrong or had lied. Those reversals are incredibly powerful evidence because they show even Trump's supporters ultimately chose truth over loyalty when faced with overwhelming proof. The witnesses who broke down on the stand apparently did so because the emotional weight of lying became too much. They'd been defending Trump for months, making statements they knew were false. And when confronted with proof of the truth, they couldn't maintain the lies anymore. The stress and guilt overwhelmed them. They broke down. They admitted everything. Those emotional breakdowns are compelling for juries. They show genuine human reaction to being caught in lies. They show the witnesses aren't hardened criminals, but regular people who made bad choices and eventually couldn't live with the deception. The judge's characterization of the evidence as historic and potentially outcome determinative is as close as a judge can come to saying Trump will be convicted. Judges have to maintain neutrality. They can't openly predict verdicts. But by calling evidence outcome determinative, this judge is signaling that any reasonable jury looking at this evidence will convict, that the evidence is so strong that the outcome is essentially predetermined. The insider knowledge about election interference apparently includes details about meetings where Trump and his advisors discussed how to overturn the results. Who said what plans were proposed, what actions were taken. All of it documented through notes and testimony from people who were there. That evidence proves Trump's conduct wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't a rally that got out of hand. It was part of a planned conspiracy to prevent the lawful transfer of power. And Trump was at the center of planning and directing that conspiracy. The evidence about deleting surveillance footage apparently shows a systematic effort to destroy evidence after Trump learned he was under investigation. He knew investigators might search his property. He knew there was footage showing him and others moving classified documents, and he ordered the footage deleted. That's obstruction. That's destroying evidence. That's exactly the kind of consciousness of guilt that proves Trump knew he'd committed crimes. The illegal retention of classified documents evidence apparently includes not just proof Trump had the documents, but proof of what he did with them, showed them to people without clearances, discussed classified information in unsecure settings, refused to return documents when subpoenaed. All of that proves not just possession, but knowing and willful retention. Proves Trump understood the documents were classified and chose to keep them anyway in violation of law. The real-time digital communications include texts and emails between Trump and his co-conspirators, messages discussing how to hide classified documents, how to lie to investigators, how to obstruct the investigation, all sent while crimes were being committed. That contemporaneous communication is powerful evidence because it can't be explained away as misremembering. These are messages from the time showing exactly what Trump was thinking and doing. The piercing of attorney-client privilege that allowed Smith to access these communications is significant. Normally, communications between Trump and his lawyers would be protected. But Smith apparently convinced a judge that the crime fraud exception applies, that Trump was using his lawyers to further crimes rather than to get legal advice. And once that exception applies, privilege is waived. All those previously protected communications become admissible evidence, all available to prove Trump's guilt. The hidden memos and emails that were unlocked apparently include strategy documents showing Trump and his team planning obstruction. Planning how to hide evidence, how to lie to investigators, how to prevent witnesses from cooperating. All of that planning is evidence of conspiracy to obstruct justice. Shows this wasn't one impulsive decision, but a systematic campaign to prevent accountability. The forcing of witnesses into truth-telling under oath through confrontation with evidence is standard prosecutorial technique, but it's devastating when it works. When witnesses can't maintain lies because proof shows they're lying. When they're forced to choose between continued perjury or admission of truth. And apparently, many of Trump's witnesses chose truth when confronted with Smith's evidence, chose to reverse their testimony rather than face criminal prosecution for continued lying. The new criminal and congressional probes being fueled by this evidence show the cascading consequences. Because Smith's evidence isn't just being used in this one case. It's being shared with other prosecutors, being provided to congressional investigators, being used as basis for additional charges and additional investigations. That creates comprehensive legal jeopardy for Trump, not just facing conviction in this case, but facing new charges in other cases based on the same evidence. The description of this evidence as historic and the defense as in shambles reflects that this is a definitive turning point from which Trump's defense cannot recover. This is the moment the case turned irreversibly against Trump. The moment conviction became inevitable. The moment Trump's legal fate was sealed. Let's break down what this evidence dump and witness collapse mean for Trump's legal future. Special counsel providing evidence the judge calls outcome determinative essentially guarantees conviction. When a judge reviews evidence and says it alone could decide the case, that's a judge telling everyone conviction is virtually certain. Juries are going to see the same evidence the judge saw and are going to reach the same conclusion. Trump's guilt is proven beyond reasonable doubt by this evidence package. Trump witnesses reversing testimony and breaking down on the stand destroys any remaining credibility of Trump's defense. When your own witnesses are admitting they lied for you, when they're breaking down under the weight of maintaining false stories, juries don't need to hear much more. The defense is over. The witnesses prove Trump's guilt by their reversals and breakdowns. The trifecta of insider notes, digital forensics, and recordings provides 3 independent streams of evidence, all proving the same facts. That's overwhelming. Prosecutors can prove their case through insider testimony, can prove it through digital records, can prove it through Trump's own recorded admissions. No matter which evidence stream juries find most credible, they all lead to the same conclusion. Trump is guilty. The piercing of attorney-client privilege to access previously hidden communications shows Smith has successfully argued Trump was using lawyers to commit crimes. That finding has enormous implications. Means all Trump's communications with lawyers about these cases are potentially admissible. Means there's likely even more evidence Smith hasn't revealed yet. Means Trump's attempts to hide behind privilege have failed. The description of this evidence as historic and the defense as in shambles reflects that this is a definitive turning point from which Trump's defense cannot recover. This is the moment the case turned irreversibly against Trump. The moment conviction became inevitable. The moment Trump's legal fate was sealed. Now, let's think about what this means for the broader political landscape. Trump has built his entire political identity around being a fighter. Someone who takes on the establishment and wins. But facing certain conviction, facing witnesses who were supposed to support him, collapsing and admitting they lied, that image of invincibility is shattered. His supporters might still believe in him, but the legal reality is becoming undeniable. The evidence is too strong. The testimony is too damning. The legal process is moving forward regardless of political consequences. The psychological impact of this evidence on Trump and his inner circle is significant. Trump has always believed he could talk his way out of anything, that his force of personality could overcome any obstacle. But recorded admissions don't care about personality. Digital forensics don't care about political power. Witnesses who break down on the stand and admit they were lying for you don't care about loyalty anymore. The evidence is indifferent to Trump's feelings or his claims of persecution. It exists independently of his narrative, and that evidence says he committed crimes. The defense strategy going forward is effectively non-existent. Trump's lawyers can't argue the evidence is fabricated because it's too corroborated. Can't argue the witnesses are lying because the witnesses are his own people admitting they previously lied for him. Can't argue Trump didn't know what he was doing because his own recorded admissions prove he did. There's nowhere to go. No strategy left, no way to prevent conviction. The impact on other Trump allies and associates is also significant. If Trump's own witnesses are collapsing and admitting they lied, that sends a powerful message to anyone else who might be considering lying to protect Trump. The risks are too high. The evidence is too strong. The likelihood of getting caught is too great. Cooperation becomes more attractive than continued loyalty. This creates a cascade effect where more people flip, more evidence emerges, more testimony becomes available. And each new piece of evidence strengthens the case against Trump and weakens any remaining defense. The potential for asset seizures and financial consequences adds another layer of pressure. If Trump is convicted of financial crimes, courts can seize assets as part of criminal penalties. If he loses civil cases, he may have to pay judgments that require liquidating assets. Trump's business empire and personal wealth could be at serious risk if multiple legal cases proceed to unfavorable conclusions. The risk of imprisonment is perhaps the most significant consequence. Trump has been facing the possibility of criminal conviction for years, but it always seemed theoretical. Courts were slow, appeals were available, immunity claims were being litigated. But all of that is over now. The evidence is definitive. The witnesses have collapsed. The judge has signaled the outcome is clear. Trump could actually go to prison. A former president of the United States could be incarcerated. That's unprecedented in American history. That's a moment that will reshape how we think about presidential accountability forever. The fact that Trump's own supporters couldn't maintain his lies when confronted with evidence is perhaps the most devastating aspect of this case. These were people who believed in Trump, who supported him, who were willing to testify on his behalf. And even they couldn't do it when faced with proof. They chose truth over loyalty. They chose their own legal safety over continued deception for Trump. That's a powerful statement about the strength of Smith's evidence. The thoroughness of Smith's investigation is evident in every aspect of this case. He didn't just gather enough evidence to charge Trump. He gathered enough evidence to guarantee conviction. He flipped witnesses who were supposed to be on Trump's side. He recovered deleted files and surveillance footage. He obtained recordings of Trump's private admissions. He pierced attorney-client privilege to access strategic communications. He built a case that's effectively unbeatable. That level of thoroughness is rare in any prosecution, let alone one against a former president with enormous resources and political power. Smith knew he had to be absolutely certain before proceeding. He knew he had to have overwhelming evidence because the political pressure against prosecution was so intense. And he delivered. He built a case that proves Trump's guilt beyond any doubt. The judge's characterization of the evidence as historic is telling. This isn't just any case. This is the prosecution of a former president for crimes committed while in office. This is a test of whether the American legal system can hold the most powerful people accountable. And the evidence Smith has gathered proves that accountability is possible. The system can work. Justice can be served, even against a president. The impact on public trust in the legal system is significant. When people see a case this strong against Trump, when they see witnesses who were supposed to be on his side collapsing and admitting they lied, when they see a judge describing the evidence as outcome determinative, it reinforces faith that the legal system can actually work, that it can hold powerful people accountable, that justice isn't just for ordinary people. The impact on Trump's political future is also clear. Conviction would disqualify him from holding office again. Even if it didn't, the political damage of being convicted of crimes would be enormous. His supporters might still love him, but independent voters and swing voters would be much less likely to support a convicted criminal. His ability to raise money and mobilize supporters would be diminished. His influence on the Republican Party would be weakened. Other Republican politicians would be less willing to associate with him. The legal case is effectively ending Trump's political career in a way that elections never could. The cascading consequences of this evidence include new investigations in other jurisdictions. If Smith's evidence proves Trump committed crimes in multiple areas, prosecutors in other states and at the federal level could bring additional charges. Trump could face prosecution for different crimes in different courts, creating a comprehensive legal nightmare that would consume the rest of his life. The revelations from this evidence will likely reshape public understanding of Trump's presidency. If the evidence shows he was systematically trying to overturn an election, systematically obstructing investigations, systematically retaining classified documents, that fundamentally changes how history will view his time in office, not as a controversial presidency, but as a criminal enterprise conducted from the White House. That's a devastating legacy. The shame of conviction is perhaps the most significant consequence for Trump personally. Trump has always cared deeply about his image, his reputation, how he's perceived. Being convicted of crimes, going to prison, that's the ultimate humiliation for someone who's built his entire identity on being a winner. It's the complete destruction of everything he's tried to project about himself. The judge's willingness to call the evidence outcome determinative shows how strong the case is. Judges are trained to maintain neutrality, to avoid any appearance of bias. So when a judge says something like this, it's because the evidence is so overwhelming that neutrality would be dishonest. The judge is essentially saying any reasonable person looking at this evidence would conclude guilt. That's as close to a guaranteed conviction as you can get in the legal system. The witness breakdowns were described as dramatic, with some witnesses sobbing uncontrollably. Those emotional responses are powerful evidence in themselves. Juries can see the witnesses aren't lying. Their emotions are genuine. Their breakdowns are authentic. And those breakdowns communicate something important to the jury. These witnesses believed in Trump. They were willing to lie for him, but the evidence was so strong they couldn't maintain the lies. That's a powerful message. The reversal of testimony, when witnesses admit they previously lied, is devastating to the defense. It shows the defense was built on lies. It shows Trump's narrative was false. It shows even Trump's own supporters couldn't maintain the fiction when confronted with proof. That makes the prosecution's case essentially irrefutable. Why would any jury believe Trump's defense when his own witnesses admit they were lying for him? The trifecta of evidence Smith delivered, insider notes, digital forensics, recordings, covers every angle. There's no way to dismiss all of it, no way to claim bias from all of it, no way to explain away all of it. It's comprehensive, it's corroborated, it's conclusive. That's what makes this case different from previous legal challenges Trump has faced. Those challenges involved allegations that could be disputed, witnesses that could be attacked, evidence that could be questioned. This evidence can't be questioned. It's too strong, too corroborated, too comprehensive. Jack Smith's evidence, recordings, notes, and digital forensics proves Trump committed crimes and sets a historic precedent that no president is above the law. The case will likely lead to conviction, prison time, and a legacy defined by criminality, reshaping the Republican Party and American democracy for generations.